Go. Everyone, thank you so much for attending live. It's so wonderful to see some familiar faces and some new faces. This is the final presentation in this series. So take just a second to wave to some of the folks who are joining. Thank you, Jenny and Polly, Amanda, Michelle. And then I'll go back to our speaker view. Today, I am joined by Marie France and Ellen Weinstein, and they have been students in this year of quilt making in 2024. It's been so wonderful to get to share a robust group of students. Not everyone in class is shared publicly. They certainly don't have to, but it's felt really, really special that a lot of people have wanted to. And as I'm sharing today in early January, there are only 3 spots left in Quiltmaking 2025. So I'm very, very happy that there's so many people who are being inspired and excited to join us. The 3 spots remaining are all on Mondays at 2 p.m. So if you are free and available right now to be joining us in person, that is the time that the next series is going to be happening and available starting in January. For those who maybe haven't been watching the whole series, what I'm sharing about is the year-long quilt making class that I teach online. In the class, we've been meeting monthly, and every month there are learning modules. And during those modules, there's about 6 hours of total content. Some of it is filmed by me. Other things are videos that I'm suggesting that you watch online. And generally, they don't cost anything extra to be able to watch. They are publicly available, but some of them are pretty big rabbit holes to find them on YouTube or on other websites. And so it's a very carefully curated listing of resources that I'm encouraging folks to view each month. And then we also meet on Zoom together in small groups for about 3 hours, and each student shares for about 10 minutes. And I really encourage them to think about it as their time. Nobody's getting a grade. This is not for a college institution. It's just taught through me, and folks are signing up because they want to learn. And so then they're able to share in their time the things that would be most helpful for them. Usually it's a response to the module, and sometimes that's things that they've sewn during the last month. Other times it's art that they went and saw in person, or things that they've been mulling around and thinking about. Often they share a PowerPoint presentation just so that we can see clearly what's going on, what they're thinking about. But once in a while, there is no PowerPoint, and they will hold things up and show us, or just talk and share, or even turn things over to the group, maybe asking a question and then using that time to get feedback about a particular topic. We also have large group meetings that we do about twice a month. And I'm so excited for next year, because next year will be large groups that include both alumni and new students. And being the first year, the inaugural class, we've only had current students in those large group co-working sessions. But now we will have a mix of alums and myself in those groups, which is going to be amazing. So it's awesome seeing so many more people logging on as I'm doing the introduction. I am going to pass things over now to Marie France. She's going to be sharing with us for about 15 minutes about her experience in class and her sewing and all the amazing things she's been up to this year.
Hey. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you, friends and classmates and other people. So great. I thought I'd begin by introducing myself and describing my practice before I go on to talk about the year. I like to call myself a textile amateur. An amateur because I'm not a professional or an expert, but I also like the secondary meaning of the word amateur, because it means that this is something you love. So I love textiles. So, and then as to the word practice, I'll also tell you about my practice. Practice to me is also a loaded word. It's something that professionals have. but it's also quite simply the things you do. So what do? I do three things. I do natural dyeing and natural dye printing and painting on textiles. In terms of the natural dyeing, I walk around and forage in my neighborhood for things like walnut husks and goldenrod and acorns, bring them home, put them in a big pot. I dye fabrics with which I'm going to quilt. Last year, I took a painting and printing with natural dyes course. So I painted and printed some fabrics, which last year, which I'm using this year to quilt with. And I'll tell you more about that later. The second part of my practice is just to be a complete textile enthusiast. I love looking at other people's textiles. I'm interested in, I read textile history. I like meeting makers. I go to gallery and museums to see all kinds of art, but especially textile art. I'm interested in old textiles, new textiles that continue traditional designs, and as well completely contemporary art. So the third part of my practice is quite simply making quilts. So you will see I started in the early 1980s with English paper piecing. I then quit quilt making for about 30 years. And then in 2017, I started it again. Again, English paper piecing, but I also started to learn how to hand piece. And I was very much influenced, I'm still very much influenced by 19th century American quilts. You might see that my practice in the last 30 years has not changed much. However, that's a bit of an exaggeration. Nonetheless, for the last few years, I've been interested in a way of gently evolving my quilt practice. So that takes us to this year. I signed up for Heidi's class because one, I like her work, and two, I was keen to evolve my quilting style to something a bit more loose or a bit different, but also still true to my personal aesthetics. Heidi promised us a class that would allow us to make quilts with any materials and techniques, to explore our own personal conceptual interests and explore our own personal aesthetics. So my first quilt of the year, I'd given it a very heavy burden. It had to be very much a me quilt, both in terms of concept and in terms of aesthetics. That was kind of a heavy burden, but I decided to keep it a bit simple, with a simple aesthetic and a simple concept, which was that I was going to use the fabric I'd painted and printed in 2023. So before I show you my first quilt, I'm going to warn you that I'm not showing the quilt, I'm showing my inspirations first. So as you can see, this is not my quilt, but my first deep inspiration for my first quilt. In 1980, I saw in one of the Quilt Digest presses, published by Kirchhoff and Kyle, one of Pamela Studstill's quilts. And I really liked the intricacy that her hand-painted stripes gave the quilts. And sort of at the back of my mind, I thought, oh, this is something I could do myself. And I think it remained at the back of my mind when I started painting and printing fabrics myself last year. I chose to paint stripes because I'm always interested in the patterns that can be created when stripes meet up or don't meet up. So my second inspiration was a workshop I did last year, a deconstructed improv log cabin workshop. It was lots of fun. In class, I combined, the idea was it would combine two strong prints with each other. And in a class, I combined one of my fabrics with an African wax print. I didn't love the results. I just let it sit there for a few months. But then again, at the beginning of this year with Heidi, I thought I would take that and work with it again. I unpicked the block, and I started again pairing my own stripes with naturally dyed solids. And in doing so, I found a way forward. So here are my first blocks. Heidi Jones, one of my classmates, might remember this. And I was a little bit dubious in the beginning. I thought the wavy stripes on the right were a bit too intense. But and was a bit too pink, but I really liked the diagonals and the random placement of the pattern, which the sort of improv aspects of the method created. So I decided to dye some more fabrics in some orangey golds to add to my palette, and I persevered. And here's the result. I've got two pictures. The one on the left is for scale, that's me. And also wanted to show that I was kind of happy. I look happy, don't I look happy with the result? I'm happy with the result. So I haven't finished quilting this. I have started, I'm about halfway through. And I can't show you the finished thing, of course, but I can show you a couple of examples of my quilting choices. So this is me quilting with pearl cotton the first time, a new thing for me. And here on the left, I've chosen to follow the patterns of the stripes. And in other places, I've chosen to just follow the blocks and to emphasize the shape of the blocks and the diagonals of the blocks. So on to the next quilt. Again, not my work, but the deep inspirations, or the inspirations for the second in what I'm now calling my Dots and Stripes series. One of the takeaways from Heidi's class is to work in a series. There's all kinds of important things and ideas about working a series that if you take Heidi's class, you'll learn about. But one of the reasons why I liked this notion was that it makes it really easier to choose the first quilt you're going to make or the second quilt you're going to make. Because any of your rejected ideas, you know you'll be able to use in the next quilt. So it gives you a lot more ease and comfort in saying, oh, I'll just go for this because there's always the next quilt for that. So I've loved both Louise Bourgeois' textile work in recent years and the spiderweb quilt, which is part of the Kirikov collection as well. I'm sure many people actually know the quilt on the left and love it too. For Louise Bourgeois, spiderwebs have a very, very particular meaning. But for me, spiderwebs and the spiderweb pattern is just another way of seeing how stripes meet up, like a kaleidoscope. And so that's what I'm interested in. So spiderweb's kind of an obvious choice for me. So here's my, here's what I made. It's smaller because I wanted to make more quilts this year rather than less. So it's made with leftovers from the log cabin block. You can see I've moved into the 20th century in my quilt inspirations rather than 19th century like the log cabin. And I really like it. My only regret is that I wish it was twice as big. So while I was quilting it and making it, I realized that it did have some other inspirations other than the strict formalist concerns about pattern and stripes. To me, there are some associations with fairgrounds and circus tents and carousels. And this was all reinforced while I was traveling 2 weeks ago, and this is what I saw. The carousel on the seaside, Dodgem Car Fairground, and finally this painting by Gika. He's was a Greek artist, one of the more famous Greek artists, and he this is in his early career, so it's a post-cubist sort of style where I thought that the wonky planes on the floor meeting up in wonky diagonals and the stripes on the awning and the spiderweb patterns on the hats, I looked and I said, that's my quilt. So there you have it, my retrospective inspirations, as you will. For my third quilt that I made this year, I not going to show you the inspirations because here I didn't have any images or quilts in mind when I started making it. I discovered what quilt I was making after I finished making it, or while I was making it. I wanted to take Heidi's scrap class, and I wanted to use a lot of fabrics that had meaning for me. And so in Heidi's scrap class, she shows you how she makes the scrap quilts. She uses scraps from her previous work. She honors the existing shapes of scraps as much as possible to avoid creating more scraps. And she uses various techniques to join these pieces together. And I really liked trying new ways to join pieces of fabric together, such as applique rather than straight joining with a seam. And so I really enjoyed making the improv blocks, the vignettes, which Heidi calls them. I found it much harder to organize the vignettes. As you can see, this is a complete mess. But I persevered with the help of my classmates, with the help of my family. I decided to discard some blocks. I added more blocks, and I grouped the blocks, the vignettes, according to value. So I grouped the darker ones together in the center and the lighter ones around the center. And this is what I ended up with. A center medallion quilt. So this is, here I've sort of reconciled my love of traditional design with the new way of making, with the result of center medallion. I'm going to tell you more about the fabrics I used, but first I'm going to tell you about center medallion quilts because I like talking about quilts and textiles. So these are sort of my retrospective inspirations. I knew of these quilts, and maybe that was partly the back of my mind, but it wasn't a deliberate choice to go there. These two quilts are both British, 19th century. You can see that here the center medallion is created by changing the scale of the pieces in order to create a density of design, and so creating a center. The next three are American, all masterpiece quilts. Here, the center medallion is created by color choices. Love the one on the left, early from 1825. The one in the center, of course, is an Amish one, famous. It used to be part of the Spree collection. I'm not sure if it still is. And finally, the last one is from 1960s by Patty Ann Williams. And of course, this is, she's G's Bend. And of course, this is a famous one because it was on a US postage stamp. Finally, I wanted to show you center medallion quilts from completely different tradition. I'm interested in exploring about and learning more about non-Anglo-American quilt traditions because there's so many and they're so rich. These ones are from Pakistan, mid-century or the previous century. And they look quite different from the previous center medallions. And I think that's because the borders are more important than the centers, unlike the previous ones where the centers were more important than the borders. To go back to my scrap top, still a top, as you can see, it was made with my most treasured scraps. In Dutch, there's a word called schat, which means treasure, something that's precious. But it's also got a secondary meaning, which is you use the word schat as an endearment, it means darling. And so these treasures, and this quilt's got this double meaning for me as well. These fabrics has a double meaning. And many of the fabrics were initially garments, some very intimate garments from my family members, such as my spouse's nightshirts. Some are very well worn, almost rags. Schmatter is the Yiddish word for rags, and I like that. My schatten, also schmatter. Some were lightly worn, like my son's shirt that he quickly outgrew. And some were completely unworn, like the leftover pieces from the dresses my mother made for my sister and I when we were children. Some of the pieces were used in other quilts. Caroline's mother's pajamas, Linda's father's dress shirt, my father's PJs. All these people were strangers to each other when they were alive. And so in my quilt, I've created this weird posthumous intimacy among them. This quilt also documents my own most intimate family relationships. So I'm done. Thank you all for listening to me. I'd also like to thank Heidi and my classmates for the year. I've learned a lot from all of you, so thank you.
Marie France, thank you so much. That was beautiful to see the arc of the whole year. It's been so nice in a lot of these presentations, getting to go back in time to the beginning and remember those starts. And oh, such lovely comments. Thank you, Laura and Polly and Heidi. I love that reminder of Schmatter, because that's your Instagram, the name of
Yes, no one knows what's in that, but it's that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful to get reminded of the meaning behind that. All right, and then Ellen, if you want to get started sharing your screen, we can shift over to having you share. And I popped into the chat the link for the scrap quilting class. And it's fun because I totally loved your halfway done scrap quilt just as much as the completed scrap quilt. It was just so beautiful in progress. And then really fun to hear the personal reasons about why a medallion quilt was a more appropriate choice for you.
Oh, thanks, Heidi.
Okay, and then Ellen, you're welcome to start sharing. Oh, make sure you unmute. Oh, we were almost there, and now it's everything going okay?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great. So
Yay.
excited.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellen. Just a little background before I give you background. I went to art school in San Francisco, and I lived there for 45 years. So I was very fortunate to get to see a lot of artists' exhibits. In that time, I also taught kids art, and I got exposed to so many different things. So I broke this down into like 3 sections. So why I took this course. So this is last year, at the end of the year, just this time, I was going to turn 70. I just turned 70 in May, and I decided I would completely retired from teaching kids at the end of the school year. I do still volunteer, but it's definitely different. I learned about Heidi's class and Heidi through the Quilting Nook, which I found by accident, thank goodness, because it's been the most wonderful things, and it led me to this course in Heidi. Because I've been putting off my art. I mean, I did it all through the years. I got a degree in drawing and painting. And I immediately then, when I graduated, started teaching myself to quilt. I was weaving on a loom for 30 years because I had to get just more into the textiles and creating the color. So I finally wanted to invest in myself, and it's now or never. I wanted to do my art more seriously and make it a priority, and instead of just saying it was a priority. And I love the accountability of this class. It's always there in the back of your mind, and there's always things to watch and get inspired by, and that really, really helped me. I wanted, a big reason was connecting to other textile artists that felt the same way, that were looking for their own paths, not just how to do one certain thing. I have a lot of fabric. I know a lot of you do too, but I have a lot of fabric from different places in the world and things I've collected that I absolutely love. And I wanted to start using them and enjoying them. When I went to start this class and look for pictures for my first slideshow, I was a little bit shocked about how many unfinished projects I had. I had forgotten about so many of them. Also, the other thing was, I had a dream in art while I was in art school, about being in this euphoric state of creativity. It was very vivid, and it was a state that I wanted to get to. And so I've always had this in the back of my mind. This is a quilt I just started at the beginning of the year. No matter, I'm one of those people, no matter how hard I try, points don't match. The good thing is now I don't care. So I started Heidi's class, and let's see. Wait, Fred, this isn't moving. My husband's here.
No, it's moving. We see the red.
Right, but I can't get
Oh,
past that.
The next one.
So this was the kind of quilts I started doing. See, it only goes from. Oh, you knew there had to be something. Just tap on the screen there. Yeah. But that's not, that's in the middle, isn't it? Go on, keep going. Okay. Okay, so I started doing quilts where they, I could just do whatever in each square and then square them off and put them together. This is a quilt I started at the beginning of the year with neighbor friends. We each shared some fabric, and we did our own quilts using the same kind of fabrics. This I wound up giving as a wedding present. Okay, so these are pieces that I had done. I love shibori and dyeing. I love printmaking also, because everything, I love when things are random and when they're unpredictable, and I like being surprised. And then I kind of, went on with it, and started collaging with it. Bottom one. Okay, thanks. My husband's here helping as usual. Okay, the other thing is, I love calligraphy. I love alphabets. I love the way they look, and because of that, I started learning Japanese. In this one, it's got some Hebrew lettering, but this was before the Japanese. But you can see I like using color, and there's a lot of movement, I think, in that. No doubt. Okay, so what I learned during this class. So Heidi's curriculum encouraged me to pursue the depth of my creativeness and artistic voice. So in other words, it gave me a chance to really listen to what was important to me. Like I already knew, because I'm old, what I like doing, but I felt like, was it really art? Was it really quilting? Was it this? Was it that? Um, and this really inspired me just to go for it. Like I said, I was very nervous. My first presentation, computers and talking about my own art are my weaknesses. But through having to present every month, it got easier. And also I realized that whatever I showed up with was fine. And that really helped a lot. The class framework, Heidi gave a lot of content, and some you could, for me, I absorbed some of it at the time, and some I knew, but it reminded me. It gave me a chance to revisit things, and also opened my eyes to a lot of new artists that were really exciting. Nobody does the same kind of work in Heidi's classes, and nobody does Heidi's kind of work. We all get inspired by each other, but we're all looking for what's meaningful for us. The other thing is while I was doing this, I was very involved on the Quilty Nook, which has been amazing for companionship and just being seen. And I also found my personal creative coach, Jenny Grover, through the Nook, and I've been doing that all year. And it's all of this together makes me really happy. And I feel like I've really gotten somewhere putting the effort into myself. So another thing that gave me a lot of inspiration this year is I saw this movie, Perfect Days. It's a very slow Japanese movie, as most of them are. But this concept of komorebi, of the light kind of seeping through, or as they say, leaking through the trees and the leaves, was something I was already doing in my art, but it kind of brought it together and sort of made me realize why it was so important to me and why I loved it so much. So I started doing pieces on that. I did a lot of sienna types because they all come out different. I also invested, because of Heidi's, one of Heidi's modules, I put in the money to put a better system in my studio to be able to see my fabrics better and utilize them more. So these are some collages I did. I have a lot of different things I've collected from over the years of partial quilts and dyeing and Japanese kimonos. So I started, I was really interested in figuring out how to put pieces together. This was an exhibit of Pasita Abad, a Filipina artist that the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art had earlier in the year, and it just blew me away. And she used and did everything on canvas and sewed it, and shells and buttons and all the things I love. And it just like burst open the doors for me to just go for it and to try everything and anything I felt like. This was an important piece because a friend of mine was dying this summer, and I didn't get a chance to see her. We had kind of an unequal friendship, but I still loved her. And being able to think about it and put my feelings into a textile piece just gave me such it gave me a chance to process my feelings and put them down, and it just changed my life because it had a place to go. It didn't just stay on the inside and hurt me. It felt like I had some resolution. This I did for, actually, this one, Just Beyond Our Reach, day 331, was a piece I did when 6 Israeli hostages were killed. And it really upset me. And the whole Middle East thing is like crazy and unfair to everybody. But it just seems so worthless, the whole thing. So I did this piece, and then, this piece I did for the high holidays. We always sang at our congregation. I'm not very Jewish, but this song always got to me. It's not a prayer. It's about just hoping that the world still exists, and appreciating and being able to appreciate all the small things in life. So this is a piece I did on the right. It's called Above and Below. I like playing with contrasts, and I was having fun using all these little cool scraps I had from dyeing. One of my daughters lives in Tucson, and I love the desert. And so when I go and visit her, I make these kind of sketches, and then later I embroider on them. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Why I'm happy I took this course. I gain joy by making my art a priority every day. Hold on a minute. I feel like I really achieved a daily practice. Like, I want to sew. I make sure I sew, even if it's at 10 at night, because I need to sew. I was able to work through and fill a lot of emotional holes with creativity. I've always been drawn to holes, and I really feel like I finally found something that heals me. And I've kind of known this, but now I really understand it, that most people don't have a concept of what creativity is. And they don't ask what I'm doing or ask to see my work or anything, most people, but it's not a personal thing, I'm realizing. It's just that they don't know where to start. I had a conversation with somebody who did not understand creativity at all. And he was very sincere in trying to understand. And I really appreciated it, because it made me understand that what I take for granted, a lot of people have no concept of, but that's no reflection on me. I finished a lot of small pieces during the class and some larger ones, but I came out with even more unfinished pieces, which is exciting because I see no end in sight for what I'm going to create. I just learned to accept the way I do my own art, and whatever that is. So the one on the left was my Modern Quilt Guild submission, and I wasn't going to submit anything to any show this year because I didn't want to put pressure on. But the day before the submissions had to be in, I went ahead and submitted it. I did not expect it to be accepted. It was not, but I feel really good that I believed in myself just to send it anyway. One of the people in my group was visiting her son an hour and a half away, and she came and visited me, and we shared some fabric, and we're both doing little collages based on it. So we haven't shared those with each other yet, but we're going to. And that was a nice thing. When I went to France, I met up with Eva, who was in the class on another day. And wherever I go now, I feel like I have people who understand me and I understand them. So this was something I did just this month. I made a quilt for friends visiting Japan, and I know they love purples and weird greens. And I used this beautiful Japanese fabric, and it came out to me really ugly, the one on the left. And I just couldn't get over it. And it was like, I don't even want to try and fix this because I hate it so much. And I felt so uncomfortable. And this is an exploding block I did, so none of the points match. And I started having all those old feelings of not doing something right. And then I stopped myself and I realized that I haven't felt that way all year long, of doing something wrong, that I'm in such a state of creative bliss most of the time, just doing what feels right. It really just showed me how far I've come. So I was able to let go of those feelings really fast. I started a new quilt for them, but I didn't. It's not finished, even though there's a border on it. So I gave them a wall hanging instead. Maybe they'll get the one on the right someday. These are two pieces I've done using, I'm trying to find a way, sort of like what we're talking about before with the vignettes, of putting small pieces together and just seeing what happens. And this is what I mostly like doing the most, although I've tried simplifying and apparently I can't do that. This one I did, Heidi did a circle class, and I didn't take it, but I quilted along anyway. And I always have a piece like this going, where if I'm going somewhere, I can just pull it with me and I can just sew on it whatever I want, or just sew stitches, and it's just like an accumulation. But it's called the circle game because I finished it around the time I saw the Joni Mitchell concert, which was fantastic. So next year, I want to prioritize using my Japanese kimonos and fabrics. These are silk linings that were dyed from the inside of some kimonos. This is the tip of the iceberg. Whoop. Wait, did I skip one? No. Okay. So this is a piece I did that I absolutely love, using a lot of Japanese kimono fabrics. I'm really pleased with it. I love the positive and the negative shapes, and I want to do more like this. And I want to explore more using holes, circles, and buttons, and embellishing and mending garments, and incorporating kanji into my pieces. Like I said, I love alphabets. And that is it. One thing I'd like to conclude is that everybody is so positive, and just just finding my group, it's like, it's a life-changing for me. And I just feel like I have all these people in my corner now. It's really beautiful.
Helen, thank you so much. Oh, I love your presentation. And I'm so happy that you mentioned the quilting that helped bring you to class. In the chat a little bit ago, I added a link. Next week, Monday, I'm going to be a guest instructor on the Quilting Nook. So if you're not already a member, you could join for $10 and you could learn a pleating and pin tuck technique from me. So there's so much wonderful cross-pollination between the Quilty Nook and this quilt making class. And I hope that folks will join that. And getting to see, because we've had modules on photography and other technology things, you've been able to share more of your work as the year has gone by. And it's just been incredible to see how prolific you've been with the amount of things that you're sewing. You've been so busy and maximizing your time. And even just the technology success of submitting something to QuiltCon and knowing that you are able to go through all those steps to submit something is awesome and so exciting to see if maybe, what you'll submit next year, and to, the conversations we've had, especially about looking at all the quilts that you made in a year, which handful of them might be the most modern or the most likely to get into there. I think will be really, really exciting to see how that evolves 11 months from now or so. I also love that you shared when we did our graduation recently that the one-on-one pairings were one of your favorite things about class.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And then getting to share that you got to meet Eva and Becky in person, and you even came here to my studio at the Pfister in person and enjoyed one time. You and Fred were here. So
and I saw Jenny.
in
It's
Chicago.
just nice to meet up with people when you can.
Yeah, and that the community that's created with the one-on-one pairings is so special. So I'm very excited for you to be able to read all of the comments that came through while you were presenting. That's going to be very wonderful. I'll send a copy of those.
Okay, thanks, Heidi.
And
Still don't like technology. I'm actively choosing to put my energy into quilting and not technology.
But you are really thriving with what technology is bringing.
I don't know if thriving's the word, but I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in class. You have not been doing it. You've been in the Mighty Network. You've been presenting. You've been making slideshows. It's been awesome to see that connectivity. And so we have some time now if people would like to put some questions into the chat. I know that there have been a lot of really lovely bits of feedback, but especially if you have questions for Marie France or myself or me, there are also a lot of other people who've taken the class here logged on, so they could help perhaps to add to the conversation as well. And while we're sharing, another spot got filled, so there are 2 spots left in quilt making on Mondays. I am considering adding another day as well. I would probably be adding Sunday, and I know probably 2 people who are in the Saturday class would want to move to Sunday if they could. So you can send me an email as it states in the class listing for quilt making, that if you'd like to be joined to the wait list, if there's one of the days perhaps that you could make, but it's not Monday, or just if we had more space and you'd like to join, you can certainly email me at heidiparkesinfo@gmail.com. And if there's enough interest, we'll add another day. But anyhow, if there are questions, we'd be so happy to answer. And it can be questions about your experience in class or things that you responded to in the art or the presentations. Just scrolling through to check to see if there's a question. So many beautiful bits of feedback.
I just want to say I see people from the Nook and the classes and my life in here, and this is what's been happening, is this network of people who know how to talk to each other and are there for each other. It's really very special.
Yeah, I see Marie France, you raised your hand. Please share.
Well, actually, I've just got a question for Ellen. I was really intrigued to hear. By the way, Ellen, lovely presentation.
Thank you. You too.
I loved all your work.
We're in different days, I should tell people, so we haven't gotten a chance to see our journeys that much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's extra fun for us, I think, to watch.
Yes. Yeah.
I was really intrigued by the idea that you used to be a weaver, or you're still a weaver. Do you do both?
Well,
A bit more about the
I
difference
I
choices.
moved 4 years ago from San Francisco to Sacramento, and I gave away my floor loom because I decided I'm making these kind of decisions now that I need to prioritize. So I gave away one thing. I still have 100 more, but
It's a good
I want
start.
to use a lot of the wovens I've done in my pieces too. So, and then of course you can weave on anything, right? I have a, a little loom, but if I'm weaving, I'm not sewing, and if I'm spinning, I'm not sewing. And if all the other things, that's always the big thing. So many good choices.
Yeah, my pottery wheel has been in my garage the entire time I've lived in Milwaukee.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if I'm doing both, I'm not doing the
Mhm.
as I
Oh, it's helped me to cut out one thing, and I did do it a lot, so I don't feel like I'm missing it.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I see we have a question from Eva. She's asking that, is there something you'd do differently if you were to start the class now? Eva, if you wanted to unmute and add to that question, you're welcome to. Eva is the student that we're talking about that you got to visit in France, Ellen. So
Yes, we fell in love with each other.
yeah.
We wish we lived closer.
Yeah, so it's an especially helpful question, I think, for students who are starting the class now is there something that you would do different if you were to be starting now?
I know for me, I would not have a anxiety attack about my first presentation. Easy to say now. But what happened was a couple of people sent their presentations ahead of time, and I looked at them and they were so good that I went, oh my God, what am I doing? I don't belong in this class, And so I had only the second anxiety attack in my life. The first was in 2016.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a lot of anxiety.
November.
Well, that is a wonderful reminder. If you were to
Yeah, so that really made a big difference because even though you're a professional, Heidi, and it's structured like a college class, it's very inclusive. Whatever you're doing is good, and wherever you're starting from is good. So that's a big thing for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Ellen. And then we have a new question from Kitchen. Does anybody taking the course get confused in their practice with enjoying making things around them, around themes to please yourself, but then at the same time wanting to make things others like or that you could sell? So that dichotomy between what you want and what you think will be well received. And then the two don't look alike and you're not sure which direction to go in. Sorry if I'm not present as this gets asked. I'm in the middle of the kids' bedtime in the UK. Yeah, I think that's a very relatable challenge and something that we've talked a fair amount about. And maybe I would even add to that, there's what you want to make and there's what you think people want you to make. And there can also be a disconnect sometimes with what you think you're making and what you're actually making, as well as a disconnect between what your aesthetic is, what you're drawn to. If you walk into a room and there are 100 quilts, which of the 10 will you be most excited to look at? And maybe you're not making things that are lining up with what you are excited about. But yeah, Marie-France or Ellen or other folks who are in the class who are joining. I see Amy has her screen on
Sure.
what Heidi does as well. Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk to that. I'm sure other people have lots to say. I don't make to sell, so I don't have that, but I do know about making stuff that pleases others versus making stuff that's completely for yourself. And that's one of the reasons why I took the class. In previous years, I've been involved in adult quilt swaps, so working, doing international quilt swaps where I'm swapping, making a quilt for someone overseas, and someone else in turn is going to make one to send to me. So very traditional work, small little work, which is fun. At the same time, there's sort of expectations in the swap is you're not going to do anything too weird here because the people who join the swap do quite traditional work. And I found myself getting too caught up in the rules and getting too caught in what they're going to like. That being said, I kind of like the community of those swaps. I've signed up for another one. Bizarrely. But here I found in this class, I found this for me was very much about trying to find work that really pleases me. And sometimes I felt, no, this doesn't please me, but I got to a place where I felt it does please me. And this is what work I enjoy doing in the end. So
Yeah,
other people have things to say.
I kind of feel the same way. Sometimes I want to give some of my work away, but I'm afraid that people will go, what do I do with this? You know, and I know I'm drawn a lot of times. I love what other people do. I get so excited by just seeing people do art. But then I know as much as I love what they've done, I could never do that. And I wouldn't be happy doing it. So I'm luckily at this point, I just want to figure out what I'm about. So I'm not a good person about selling. I've been through that before, and it's very frustrating. I would imagine it's even more frustrating now because there's so many people who can advertise on Etsy and Instagram and everything. And so I'm not a good person to talk about that. But I think even if you do have to sell, I think just feeling better about what you're doing helps your confidence.
Yeah, and I see Amy has her hand raised. Amy, what would you like to share on that topic?
Well, Ben, I really appreciate his comment. So hopefully she'll read the what he put in the comment, because basically I was going to reiterate that, which is that though lots of us came in with different ideas about like where we were at in our life and our artistic practice, I feel like there was room in this course for and encouraged, including modules of why are you making this? And that Heidi does a really good job of like balancing like what you're hoping for in terms of goals and being really real about that there's lots of different choices that can be, you know, all the way from her choice of quilt making as a career to doing it because you purely love to and with no desire ever to sell. And I think that was one of the nice things, was to get a chance to personally reflect on that and try to figure out what was important, and that's really supported within the class. So I think that each of us would answer that differently. The thing that I would say that I personally came out of was that I also believe that authenticity is really important. And so your work as an artist, you have to believe in what you're doing. And I think that's more important than sewing for like trends. But that doesn't mean that that's not what other artists are going to choose to do. And I think there's space for you to make those decisions based on what your thoughts are about it. And that's one of the beauty of the class, is it's really, though we're getting to do this work all together with Heidi's mentorship and support, we're each on our own journeys.
Mhm. Thank you.
And I just want to add to that, you know, putting in the time this whole year of just figuring out what it is that makes you happy to do
Mhm.
is gonna help, whether you want to sell, whether you want to just have, you know, quilts you don't know what to do with, you take out a different one every month, whatever, or pictures I like to rotate mine seasonally because I have so much art around. But it's just, you know, it's like going to college, only you're only taking what you want to take.
And you're not spread so thin because you're taking 5 classes at one time. I remember that being torturous in college.
That's right. And also people have things in their life that come up. So sometimes you can devote more time to it, and sometimes you don't have that much time, but the modules are still there for you to go back to eventually. Our group is a group of us are going to revisit all the modules together.
Mhm.
So it's that feeling, it's that, I don't know, that group support is, you know, priceless.
Mhm. You know, and I think that that's a popular question. I'm thinking back to our first conversation like this that we had in August, and Megan asked a similar question about, like, are you making quilts specifically to apply to QuiltCon, or are you making them for yourselves, or where is the line there? And, you know, I shared that I'm often amazed that I consistently am getting into QuiltCon because I feel like I'm frequently on the edge of what a modern quilt is, rather than being in that square middle of what a modern quilt is. And, you know, to me, that's a really exciting, interesting place to be. I love being on that edge, but it certainly makes it, you know, you have to be really willing and ready to have made something and then have it not get in. And I feel like I was modeling that even more than normal this year. The quilt behind me, I'm excited to say, did get into QuiltCon. I just shared it on Instagram recently. And a lot of us in class met when we were at QuiltCon and walked around the show together. I think it was about 7 of us, so not a massive group. But we had a lot of fun looking at quilts and noticing the trends and thinking about QuiltCon. And then I kind of half jokingly for several months was saying, oh, you know, what if I made a QuiltCon quilt? What would that look like? What if I challenged myself to do something more modern? And where does being more modern line up with things that I still genuinely am excited about? And then in the summer, I started to take that a little bit more seriously and less less I mean, it was still lighthearted, but anyways, I went to the next step with that idea of if I made a purposefully modern quilt. And it was such a fun thing because I had also purchased a nicer sewing machine with the idea that if I had a nicer machine, maybe I'd want to use it more, because I often don't use the machine because it bothers my shoulder and my back and my ears. And so I thought, you know, if I bought this machine, I should make a quilt. And then how fun would it be if it were a little bit more modern? So that kind of push and pull of how do I find the place where I'm still making something I'm really proud of, where I'm not going to feel so deflated if it doesn't get in because I was making it to try to please someone else, but to find that place where you can do both. Make something that's really you and that you love, but also something that is exciting. So and something that's really you and that you love, but also that's maybe aligning more with the goals of a particular institution, like the Modern Quilt Guild or other things. So that's kind of a fun overlap. And it was really fun throughout the year. I realized I made probably over 30 quilts this year, if you include a lot of the small quilts that I made. And so it was so fun throughout the year to take a lot of students on that journey of, for example, right now I'm working on a quilt that I started 16 months ago in September 2023. And so taking students on the journey of, oh, how do I return to this quilt after being on a long break and not having worked on it recently, as well as coming up with new ideas being in real time with those sorts of decisions and the pondering something for months before starting it, I think is very inherently interesting. So Mariah has a question. It's amazing how we can build up others and teach others and still have the self-critic give us an anxiety attack. Yes, good question. Yes, that's so true. And then
That's one of my daughters.
yeah, and how lovely. So kitchen is Hattie Green. I know Hattie. That's so lovely. I'm glad that that's you. That's so nice. I figured it was like your iPad that you keep in your kitchen. So Hattie, thank you for asking such a relevant question for us while you're putting the kiddos to bed. And yes, so then Ben, if you wanted to unmute and share, you'd be welcome to as well. But I'll just say in Ben's comment about making versus selling, the course, along with other things in my life, helped me realign my priorities to really step back on the making to sell, especially with patterns, to focus on making and allowing my day job to cover my expenses. And that really reminds me especially of the location goals module that we had that inspired Ellen to update her fabric storage, but that for Ben, connected to, where are you putting your energy? What location are you striving towards? And for him, that was around patterns. So just a nice example of the breadth of some of the modules where you can take an idea like location to a variety of destinations.
Yeah, and whether you work better in a studio or at home, just to really evaluate those kind of things, like not what you should do, but what you really makes you most productive and feel most creative, or where.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think those priorities, like to me, I often return to just feeling so much gratitude that folks who signed up to the class, it is a financial commitment, but even more than that, it's a real commitment of your time and your talent. And I feel like your time that you spend in class, to me, is so meaningful, and that you could be spending time doing any number of things. And I'm always reminding myself that time spent quilting, it's not necessarily your job or a thing that you have to do, but it's this really hard one, kind of leisure time and money and energy, and that you could be putting it anywhere. There's infinite things that you could be doing, like sleeping more. And so just living up to how valuable I find that part of the time that I have in my own life, and where I put that really precious free time into, and then trying to hope that it's a place that's really valuable and exciting for you to be putting your time and talent and energy and money into. So I'm just always so grateful and excited when people are putting their energy into these things. And so, Hattie, I would ask the question around if it feels good to be putting your energy into both, because you can get a lot of satisfaction from selling things and making things that people love. And that maybe reminds me a little bit of Marie Kondo and thinking about what sparks joy. And for a lot of people, they wouldn't initially say that a vacuum cleaner sparks joy, but having a vacuumed home does spark joy, or the lack of vacuuming in your home eventually sparks the opposite of joy. And so then
So does having too much fabric. That sparked joy for me.
Yeah, so having coming to that realization that, oh, you didn't think your vacuum sparked joy for you, but you think about what would you do in its absence, and then you start to realize, oh, the vacuum does actually spark joy for me. I do find it necessary and important and valuable. And you know, that it's then that unexpected gratitude that you can be filled with. And so instead of thinking, oh, I have to vacuum, you think, oh, I get to vacuum and the house is going to look awesome. And maybe I put my earbuds in and I listen to an audiobook while I'm doing it. Or you know, celebrate that you get some extra steps in and get to move your body instead of being trapped at the computer. And so you might be looking at selling from a place of obligation or financial pressure, but there may be a different angle to look at selling, that suddenly it feels celebratory and exciting, like the way you can look at your vacuum cleaner in a new way, and that can be a real source of renewed enthusiasm and of holding things that you sell and things for your making yourself with equal value, and instead of thinking of one as lesser and one as more, and that could be a fun way to roll it around as well.
I just want to say that, you know, at first, when you're signing up, it seems like a large monetary commitment, but very quickly you become really happy that you invested in yourself. And it seems like, duh, you know.
You know, and I feel like my life was so changed by taking yoga teacher training classes, and those are a $3,000 price point as well. And so when I was thinking about, wow, what if I do a $3,000 class? What should that feel like? To me, a $600 machine is a machine that can change my life. When I bought my portable dishwasher for $600, it totally upgraded my entire life. When I bought my massage chair on sale for $600 with my, what was that? Pandemic stimulus money, it totally changed my life to have that chair for my shoulder. And so a class at that price point, to me, based on my experience, having purchased classes like that, they're completely life-changing. And so my vision and goal and point of enthusiasm in offering a class at that price point is very much, how can it be a life-changing, exciting class? And I feel so happy, especially as we've gone through graduation modules and just, you know, had all of those emotions of saying farewell, but also I'll see you next month, because it's very purposeful that alumni get to stay active parts of the class into the future. That's just been a really exciting thing to have top of mind, and to be able to see. You can hope that it will end up that way and be a life-changing class, but to then discover that it truly is, and feel that other side of it is just a next level in terms of making me feel joyful and excited. Do we have?
It does seem a little crazy to say, right, that a quilt making class will change your life.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it is really striking how many of us are saying that. And that, but I think one of the reasons is that there's sort of a fundamental way where it's not really, the content of the class really isn't exactly about making quilts. Like, where it's much more like interrogating so many questions about ourselves and our art practice, and then, you know, working all that out in quilts. Right. But that's but there's a weird way in which I feel like sort of the actual physical quilts are a little incidental to like the substance of the course. And of course, like, they're not, like, everybody has made all these amazing quilts, right? And this extraordinary, you know, variety of quilts. But I just think, like, that there's a lot more there than, like, sewing pieces of fabric together. Like, that's how we're sort of expressing the content of the course, but that the substance is much bigger and broader, which is why there's a group of us who are like, okay, we need to do it all again, because we're not done with it.
Barbara, thank you so much for articulating that so beautifully. And yeah, it's only halfway a quilting class. The other half is, you know, how do you find out what your quilt is? And when you feel like you are able to translate what's on the inside into something outside more effectively, that is such a life-changing thing to be able to do.
And I think honestly, Heidi, a lot of it is about both you and the supportive community making all of us feel confident and brave to like just try the things and experience success and maybe less success at other things, but just that that we're it's a like very I mean, I feel like everyone in the class has grown in their confidence and their kind of clarity about what they do and why.
Mhm.
I think just the fact that we can advertise our QuiltCon rejects shows some confidence.
Mhm. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you showing up here on a Monday. And yes, thank you so much for being part of this series. And please make sure that you like and subscribe on my YouTube channel if you're watching the recording. And I hope to see lots of you in my class with Zach Foster on the Quilting Nook on the 16th of December. And then it will also be available on his Quilting Nook as a recording if you're watching this well after December 2024. And you know, you can always follow along with me on Instagram and on YouTube and Pinterest and my email newsletter. The email newsletter I try to have be one of the very first places where I share things that are going on. And also there is a pre-registration list linked on the class listing for 2026. So if, like how Hattie mentioned, that you're hoping to join the class in the near future, but you know 2025 is not the right year for you, if you sign up to that list, then you'll be the very, very first group to find out more about the class. And you'll also be able to add your preferences around what time of day the classes are offered. That's always a tough struggle for me to figure out. When will the most people hopefully be able to attend live? And that pre-registration list will allow you to share your availability for class, which is really key for me, knowing when to offer things. But everyone, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Heidi.
Mhm.